Welcome to the Intentional Household Podcast. Today, we are thrilled to welcome a truly inspiring guest, Stacey Brion. Stacey is a dedicated and licensed registered psychotherapist in Ontario, specializing in guiding individuals and families through life's most challenging transitions. With a passion for supporting children, adolescents, and adults, Stacey doesn't just work within the confines of her office. She goes the extra mile, collaborating in homes and schools to provide comprehensive, real-world support. Stacey's impressive background includes 2 master's degrees, one in developmental psychology and another in counseling psychology. She is also a trained mediator and voice of the child report provider, making her an invaluable resource for families navigating complex dynamics such as divorce, separation, and conflict resolution. Her therapeutic approach is deeply person-centered and integrative, ensuring that every individual receives tailored support that meets their unique needs. Whether it's trauma-focused therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or couples counseling, Stacey's diverse skill set allows her to create meaningful change in the lives of her clients. Outside of her practice, Stacey is a devoted mom of 3 and an avid traveler, bringing a well-rounded perspective to both her work and personal life. In today's episode, we'll be diving into the challenges of bedtime, and Stacey will share practical strategies for reducing bedtime struggles, improving communication, and creating a consistent routine that works for kids and parents. Stacey, welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you here. Stacey, why is bedtime such a common challenge for families?
It's a complex question. It's a good question. It's a complex question. I think there's one thing that we always have to keep in mind, which is by the time we reach bedtime, everyone is compromised. I'm tired, my kids are tired, you're tired, your kids are tired. So we also have to have realistic expectations about what's going to happen during this time, right? That's number one. I think oftentimes it's also like a race to the finish line for parents. And I certainly understand that, because it's like, oh, if I can just get all these kids to sleep, 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter, then I'm going to have some freedom.
That's
right?
how I see it.
Of course.
A race to the finish line.
And that's where also, when I talk to Laura, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever miss bedtime. I effing hate bedtime. But it's actually the after 8 o'clock part. It's like everything up to 8 o'clock, it's good, but it's that okay, I want this done now because as you said, we're compromised, we're drained. We want our own personal time to recharge our battery a little bit. So it's a great way how you put it.
Yeah. And but I also think it's worth recognizing that if I'm tired, I can't even imagine how tired my children are. I think sometimes we underestimate too, what school-age children. It's a lot of time and energy in school in a day. They output so much that in a lot of ways they're more compromised than we are at that point, even though we're sitting there going, okay, just get moving so I can have a second to myself.
Yeah. So if we're exhausted and we're feeling short, we can only imagine how exhausted and just impatient they're feeling as well.
Yet we're turning around and asking them to listen, to engage, do what I say, do it in this way, do it quickly, do it over there, do it over here, come there. It's a lot to ask of kids. And I think sometimes we don't take a step back and recognize that.
Though Laura and I do get excited when one of our kids is especially cranky because we know that they'll fall asleep quickly.
Yes,
yeah, we will be behind the kids' backs, giving each other a thumbs up when they have their outbursts, because we know that the end is near.
That's like the balloon letting its air out, right? Yeah, it'll deflate eventually.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about bedtime, and if there are actually things that we or parents may be doing that may be making bedtime unintentionally more difficult or making the kids more resistant to bedtime. So, and I'm sure that we will get into those examples as we go through bedtime. So maybe we should just start from the very beginning. And we know the importance of having structured bedtime, which is easier or less challenging when you have one child. So we have 3 kids, just to set you up. 3 kids, they are 3, 5, and 7. Alex and I, we both do bedtime together because we are outnumbered, as are
Certainly.
you. You
Yeah.
have 3 kids as well.
Yeah.
So how would you structure that? And I'm thinking about their various ages and maybe they have different bedtimes. So how do we begin here with the bedtime process?
So many things I guess you can keep in mind. I think it also depends on, like you mentioned that your kids are 7, 5, and 3.
Mhm.
So mine are 13, 6, and 3. So of course, very different needs when it comes to bedtime, very different abilities about, self-soothing and all of these other things. I think to answer your first question, how do we make it more difficult? We make it far too complicated.
Okay.
We give too many options.
Okay.
There are too many possibilities for what before bedtime could look like. And we haven't gotten into necessarily what your routine looks like. But I think regardless of the age, you should follow the 5 Bs. And I don't know if you've heard of this before, right? So the 5 Bs, and I'm talking right from like infancy through to like as long as you have a say in a bedtime.
Okay.
It should be bath, bottle, brush, book, bed.
Okay.
Okay. So holding on to those. Granted, your infant's not necessarily brushing their teeth. But what I would say in that, like how we can look at the different ages, is that from the time they have their first tooth, developmentally, what we always say, if you want to get them into a pattern of not hating brushing their teeth, even for example, from tooth number 1, you should start including that in a bedtime routine.
Okay.
So that's at a fairly young age for some children. And granted, the, infants, I always say, once you've given them their bath, don't then engage them in something else. Don't take them downstairs and then back upstairs. For a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, certainly you may do that.
Okay.
But the organization and the flow of your evening should be similar at all ages.
Okay. Wow. That is already, that's incredible. I can already see where we are going wrong.
I think we're okay. I'm this. By the way, guys, I'm the softie on this one, so we'll see. I think we're doing it. We do all those 5 things.
Okay.
There's just TV in between.
That's a huge one, right? We'll get to that, I'm sure. But TV and how to use it, how to wield it, right, is important.
Exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. We're okay. We wield it as a tool to move the process along. It's a reward-based thing. It's to get them from one section to the next section, and it's a limited set amount of time as well.
Can you explain the 5 again?
Sure. Of course. So bath, right? Like that's where, for me, doesn't matter what age, that is the beginning of said routine.
Okay.
So, my teenager may have a bath and then go and engage in other things, but she even knows that once that shower, that bath, like we're in like pajamas after. We're not then getting dressed to go and do something else, right? Whereas my little ones as well, they may watch TV after their bath.
Okay.
But what are they doing after bath? They're also having their snack, maybe instead of a bottle, right? Because your next one is bottle, bath, bottle. An infant probably feeds right after a bath. My kids go downstairs and have milk. They still love their milk, but they may also have a snack with that milk. So that's, where it sits. Then we come upstairs. Then we brush our teeth. Not till all of those routines are done do we sit and read our book, or there's a lot of different options now. For some kids, like, don't want to read a book every night. They want to sing a song. They want to do something else. We can talk about how to like play around with different things. And then last step, bed.
Okay.
Right.
And do you have, should this take an approximate amount of time?
That's a hard question. Somebody's going to like come after me for this. I would say, like, unless we're talking about like having a bath and then stepping away for TV or whatnot. But the time when you bring your kids into their room and it is time, as far as I'm concerned, it should be no longer than 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
That seems crazy to parents. They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, how many songs are you singing? How many books are you reading? How long can it possibly take a 5-year-old to brush their teeth?
Okay, so I love how you asked that, because my question is around resistance.
Yes.
If I say to our 3-year-old, I'm going to read 3 books to you,
Mm-hmm.
he chooses the 3,
Mm-hmm.
and I communicate again, these are the 3 books we're
Mm-hmm.
reading. Okay, we read the books. And then after he said, okay, we're going to read this one. I said, well, we're reading 3 books. And then he freaks out. So how do you deal with?
Wait. And then he freaks out. I want daddy. Get me daddy.
Why does he want daddy?
Well, and then
I say, I'm not going to read books to him. He's like, I want mommy again.
but sometimes he will, right? Like, I think we need to recognize that sometimes he will go to daddy and daddy will read that other book.
Yes. And that's why he's calling for daddy, right? I mean, I think, when you come to like the biggest mistake we make, I think, quite frankly, and this comes with a lot of parenting, whether it be bedtime or otherwise, don't introduce things to your children that you and your spouse are not in complete agreement on. Because children, of course, what are they trying to do? They're trying to figure out who they can get what from because they want what they want.
Yes.
It's adaptive. It's something they need to learn. And they're going to look for the weakest link or just the person that just is not as rigid, maybe, right? It really depends on what we're talking about. So I do think it's really important for parents to first decide, like, what are we actually capable of doing together? Where are we able to set boundaries? Where are places where we recognize, like, don't call me, don't tap me, and I'm never going to be the person that's able to say no. But to make sure you really have a good understanding about that before you then tell your children, hey, we're doing the 5 Bs. He's not really on board or she's not really on board, but we're going to try that anyway.
Yeah. So discussing the strategy in advance before one parent attempts to implement it.
Certainly.
Yep.
Well, and ideally, like, I hear that you both kind of put your children to bed together, and that's important. So it's, somebody's not going to participate in a plan that's not theirs unless they really understand the plan.
No. Yeah.
And I'll also say, like, how we put the kids down together. So in the scenario Laura's talking about, I'm not in the room with the 3-year-old. She has now separated the 3-year-old from the 5-year-old and the 7-year-old. So they're off in a room, locked down is actually the word, locked down together. And then I'm with the other 2. So she actually has the full control over the situation because it's all about getting the one child down. When you have 3 kids or more, one child. Once we get one child down, then you can separate the next 2 and then get them asleep. That's our goal of every night.
There are so many things to talk about here and so many questions to ask. I don't even know where to go next, but one thing that I really want to ask or go over, because for some reason, Alex seems to find bedtime way more exhausting than I find it. Yes, I find it exhausting, but you.
Yeah, because you leave.
But this is
you leave.
you're
like, peace out. You're like, peace out. I'm done, and I'm left with the other 2.
But this is my question.
Yes.
If handling bedtime is in a horizontal position and one parent is laying down in the bed,
yes,
could that make it more exhausting? This is actually a real question, though. Could that make it more exhausting for them because they're actually in a more relaxed position, in a position where they essentially like want to go to sleep? And so I'm wondering if that
he's already tired, though, is part of the problem, though, right?
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that could be making him more exhausted than if he was actively sitting up. This is a true question.
I wasn't sure where this was going. There's some humor in this. But are you stressed out at the end of bedtime, or are you tired at the end of bedtime?
No, I'm tired at the end of bedtime.
But we're talking about, okay, it's bedtime. Everyone has bathed, brushed their teeth.
I would say my stress comes like after the 8 o'clock going like, oh man, I need to be in bed by X time. And if I want my downtime, I need this to be done. So that's absolutely stressful.
Tick tock.
Exactly. That's the stress. That's the stress point. The exhausting point, I'm already past the stress point and I've fallen asleep and I'm waking up all drowsy and I still got to take the dogs out for a walk.
I can't. Like, I cannot lay down in the bed with my children because I will fall asleep. And if I fall asleep, I'm not going to wake up, or I am going to wake up and I'm going to be so cranky. My husband, on the other hand, could sleep there for 45 minutes if he wanted to, get up and be like, they're asleep. I'm like, well, yes, because you did it the easy way, because you just went to bed with them. They don't know you left.
Yes. And so I also wanted to ask about that and laying with them. having them fall asleep, because our kids still want us to lay with them until they fall asleep. And I'm wondering if there's a certain age, when we should no longer be doing that, or what is a great strategy around handling that so they aren't fully dependent on you?
I think it's a sensitive question, right? Because I think typically these types of behaviors start when our kids are little. And I would never tell a parent, mother or father, like not to co-sleep with their children. I think that's absolutely a personal choice. I think children end up okay one way or the other. I don't comment on like, is that going to do something to my child? Probably not. Like, I don't know your child though, right? But I think that we are doing our children a disservice at a certain age if they have not yet figured out how to self-soothe.
Okay.
And what we often find is that children who require an adult to sleep until they are like fully asleep, you will find that those children typically are more needy in life.
Okay.
Right? Like, and
Wow.
even during the day, like if
Mhm.
those are still the same children who, if they wake up in the middle of the night, may need you to lay back down with them to put them back to sleep, or
Okay.
can't problem solve amongst their friends when they get to a certain age because it's not even that they're incapable. They don't have the confidence to do it themselves because we've given them a message that in order for you to feel safe, in order for you to feel confident, in order for you to even be in this space by yourself, you need mom or dad with you.
And so are there any first steps that parents could do if their kids are at a certain age right now, depending on them to fully fall asleep? What is a first step they can take so that they can start distancing themselves so that they aren't there in the room when they fall asleep?
I think it's a conversation.
Okay.
I do think although I think the plan needs to be between parents, we need to kind of tell our children, explain to our children what bedtime is going to look like.
Okay.
I do think there are places where they can have some autonomy, where they can be, we can share with them, like, it's really important that you start to learn to sleep by yourself. So we, family, you, mom, dad, we're going to talk about what this could look like.
Okay.
And instead of surprising them or all of a sudden being like, well, it's 8
Mhm.
o'clock, I'm out, and they go, what do you mean? You've always been here. Where are you going? Just to be able to explain to them tonight, what's going to happen is I'm going to lay down with you. I'm going to lay down with you till I see that you're tired or that, I can tell that you can do this on your own. And then I'm going to leave. In order for me to do that, what do you need from me? And then kids will make things up. Sometimes I'm not even sure they're really attached to what they're saying, but they want a buy-in, right? They want a say in this. So to be able to say, like, we could make sure that we have that particular stuffed animal. We could make sure that your water's directly beside you. We could make sure that A, B, C, or D, whatever is going to help soothe your child. And now I know you can do it. Child's name, fill in the blank, because I have faith in you and I know you have everything that you need. And I'm here when you're falling asleep usually, right? Like, I know you got this. And it's not necessarily easy day 1 or 2 or 3. But I think the second they realize that they don't have a choice, like that this is the plan and this is what's going to happen, and no amount of crying is going to make you sleep with them till they fall asleep, they're fine.
I love that. So it's having a conversation before bedtime and not waiting until you're in the heat of the moment.
Of course, when everybody's already compromised, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I wouldn't have thought about that. It would have been in the moment. Surprise. Yeah. Okay. And so they know what to expect. They have time to think about it, prepare.
Whine about it.
Okay.
Whatever it is.
Yep.
Right?
And then it sounds like then as the parent, you're staying strong. And so that's where it can fall apart for us because we're tired, or if they're the child who's loud enough and they cause enough disruption, then they could potentially wake the other kids.
Mm-hmm. And I think you prepare for it.
Okay.
I think you decide not to do it on like a Monday night when everybody has school tomorrow, but maybe instead on a Friday evening. It's like anything. Remember when your kids were really little, and if we wanted to change something in an infant, we planned for it. We were like, we're going to start, we're going to start sleep training on this day, and we're going to give it this much time, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. I'm not sure if you sleep trained your children, but it often with infants requires like a good amount of planning. I think if you do these things successfully and you leave the space for that planning and you tackle it as like this thing you're going to overcome, you will.
Yep. Now, what about kids who wake up in the middle of the night and come to your room and you don't want them in your room? Or they come to
Fair
your
enough,
bed.
because some parents do.
Yeah. They come, let's just say
I
they
do
come
not.
to your
Yes.
bed and you don't want them in your bed with you.
Right.
Are there any strategies parents can do there to handle the kids? Is there anything that you would advise?
I think there's a lot of things. I think some parents
Okay.
come to this at different stages and ages. If I would say if your child is sick and it's like a once off thing, let
Mhm.
them sleep with you. They're sick.
Okay.
Right? Like, and that's where like my heart bleeds, but they don't feel good. However, I think it's often a good idea, not only for you absolutely every time you walk them back to your room, their room, you let them know they're okay. You try to be patient, right? Like, again, we just want to get back to bed because to your point, there's that clock ticking and I'm losing sleep and I'm losing patience. But just to be able to explain to them you're safe and I will sit here even at the end of your bed for a few minutes while you relax and you go back to sleep.
Okay.
Some parents I know keep like mattresses under their kids' bed and pull them out and they'll lay on that rather than getting in bed with their children.
Okay.
But I would also say every child is different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are children who that one off can sleep with mom and dad for the night and then the next day recognize we're back to business as usual. I don't have a fever anymore. There are other kids that will use that and be like, but I did it last night.
Or they'll go, I'm sick.
All the time.
Yeah. So that had been us for about 2.5 years. Right, Alex?
Yes.
Yeah.
We made a mistake. When I made a mistake, again, 3 children, our middle one, we let him sleep in our bed, and it lasted for 2.5 years, and many different incarnations of trying to get the behavior to stop. And or I would say earlier on in the process, I tried to get it to stop by doing the traditional, like bringing them back up to the room.
Yes.
And then
Initially, of course.
and,
That's
and,
what
and then they come back down.
very beginning.
And next night again, I do it again. They come back down. And next night again, they do it back. They come back down. And I decided that they had won the war because I just needed to sleep.
And then we had gone through this stage of having a mattress for them
In the room.
On your floor.
on
On
our
our floor,
floor.
yes.
Got it.
Which worked well for a good chunk of time.
But he would still come down every night, but he would just sleep on the floor, which that worked. Then somehow we got out of that because I think we thought we had cured the behavior, and then somehow he was getting back into the bed, and it got to the point where he would get in the bed, and then it kind of started going into like the other two started doing a little bit, and then all of a sudden every night they would this is what it would literally be. Every night I would get woken up by one of them, and it was like it was an exchange. They would go into the bed and I would leave and go sleep in one of their beds.
Yeah.
Like that's actually how it ended up working. And then until recently, fairly recently, I'd say within the last month, I had enough. And a twofold system had allowed us to actually break the cycle. Number one, recently we had started a check mark system to encourage their various behaviors. So it's an overarching system. They get a check mark if they do a specific thing or a specific action. So that was needed. So that's point one. And then point two, the worst offender, the middle one, the one that actually had the habit ingrained in them, wanted something really bad one day, and it was to watch Wild Robot, a movie, and currently you can't get that on streaming unless you pay for it. And he's like, "Daddy, I'm going to give you money. How much money? I'm gonna pay you for it." I'm like, "No, I don't want your money." I'm like, "This is what I want from you. If you sleep through the night in your own room, I will get the movie for you." And he's okay, deal. I'll sleep through the night. I'm like, "We got a deal." Like, we got a deal. And then that night when we went to bed, I'm like, "Remember our deal?" It's like, I remember our deal. And the first night he did come down. He did come down. And I reminded him about our deal, and he was a bit whiny about it, but he went fine, and he went back upstairs, and it worked. And then we also combined that with the check mark system, going that we told the kids, we're not going to give you a check mark for sleeping in your beds, but you will lose an existing check mark if you come down, because sleeping in your bed is an expected behavior. You're not going to get check marks for expected behavior, but you're going to lose it by not doing the expected behavior. So now with the 2-point system, one being here's a big reward for you stopping this behavior, and then we have an enforcement system to keep that behavior going. It's been good, and it's a role modeling system as well, and role model or a teaching lesson for someone as well. Going, you gave your word for something, so do you want to keep your word? Do you want to be that person? And he did. He wanted to do that. So that actually ended up working. And we were talking earlier, Stacey, and Laura said, like, is it okay to bribe? And what was your reply?
Absolutely. In theory, right? Like, you're not going to bribe your kids with anything, but I wholeheartedly support both of those things. Incentives, especially depending on the age of your child, because let's be honest, younger children, and I would say like 8 and under, really benefit from incentives.
So beyond the check mark, what are some other incentives people or parents could offer?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I guess it depends on how your family works too, right? I mean, sometimes what I like to say about incentives is, I mean, in this case, I think you had mentioned it was a movie. I don't know if you just mentioned that right now, which is great because why? That's something we can engage in together.
Okay.
I like ideas, incentives, like you get to decide what we order for takeout on Friday night, or you get to decide what bath colors we use in the bath today, or like things that actually like help facilitate things for the family.
Okay.
Because to your point, I think you mentioned like this idea of what your responsibilities are in a home. And what I truthfully believe is that every child, no matter how old, has a responsibility to their family. And so sometimes I'll explain to my middle, who's similar to your middle age, she's 6, is that it's not just about what mommy wants you to do or what daddy wants you to do. It's that your little sister sees what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have a responsibility to show her how it's done. Because let's imagine the roles were reversed. How would you feel if she was doing this to you? And I get buy-in that way.
Okay.
Because you are fulfilling a duty to this family. You're a part of this family. You're an equal part of this family. And just like you expect things from mommy, mommy expects things from you. And often that conversation actually goes quite well, especially for a child who aims to please at some level. Not all kids do, but for kids who care about pleasing mommy and daddy still, and you only have an age for that too, right? It works quite well.
Laura, would you say that number 2 likes to please you?
Yes, he does.
Does he make you breakfast in the morning?
He does make me breakfast.
Only you?
Yeah.
See, but he's doing, and I would even just say like he's fulfilling a responsibility to his family. He's helping take care of the family, and I love that.
Yeah. He takes that very seriously. If Alex is ever away, he fully steps up as the man of the household. And Alex makes breakfast for the family most mornings. So he knows that when Alex is gone, it's up to him to do breakfast for everyone.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, which is really wonderful.
That is so sweet.
But how cute was it, Laura, this week when he said, "Mommy, I'm gonna take." I was home, just for the record, but he was like, "Mommy, I'm gonna just take a break from making breakfast today. I'm taking a day off. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I just want to relax."
But see, it shows you how like close he holds it to his, like how much he's helping and that what that means to him.
I feel like a lot of what you are sharing with us is that it comes down to communication.
Huge.
And having
Doesn't it always, Laura?
Yes, it does. It does. And treating them like they are humans and able to have a conversation and able to understand what it is we're saying and what we mean and what we need and what we want, and just talking to them so that they can understand what we expect and where we're coming from. And, you know, like you, Alex, you had a conversation with Jack, and he understood and he followed through.
And I think like going to the deeper meaning of that, and Stacey, you brought it up. We're all empty at the end of the day. The kids are empty, you're empty. And let's give ourselves as parents a bigger incentive for working and creating a system. And what I mean by that is the short-term goal is getting them to sleep, right? but let's give us a bigger motivation to work on creating a system with them to find what works, because the bigger motivation is you're actually creating the future version of them, the best future version of them, by that role modeling, by creating those systems, so that then they are learning by you creating systems that they can create systems in their own lives in the future, and they know how to do that. As you said, like, hey, if you're constantly helping your child fall asleep every night and lying beside them, and they're falling asleep every night, and after a certain point of the age they should be doing on their own, now you're actually hurting their developmental abilities, because now you're not teaching them how to cope on their own with situations, which could then flow through and create them needy and everything like that in situations. So looking at this as, hey, let's not, the short-term goal is, yes, getting them to sleep, but the long-term goal is making them the better and best versions of themselves. Like, just to parents out there in regards to the incentive for that.
Well, and I think that's an even greater motivator.
Absolutely.
Understanding the long-term effects
Mhm.
beyond right now, and just trying to get them to sleep so that I can have a little bit of my time before I go to sleep.
Well, and I think sometimes, we talk about, there are people who will judge this idea of like children sleeping on a mattress in your room or in their own, or you sleeping on a mattress in their room. And what I'll say is, but what is the goal and what is the important goal? The important goal is that my child has enough sleep.
Okay.
And yes, I would also love to have my time, and I would also love to not be bothered in the middle of the night, and I would also love all of those things. But number one is that everybody needs to sleep.
Oh.
And sometimes that's all it needs to be.
Okay.
Actually I was reading something recently that was talking about how much sleep children need. And I was shocked to hear, and I don't know because I have to obviously do more research on this, how the numbers have come down.
Wow.
Because when I was studying a ton of years ago, developmental psychology, for example, we knew that children, no matter, I would say 18 under, needed at least 10, 11 hours of sleep. They've now dropped that number down to 9 to 10, which fine, you're looking at an hour. To me,
That's what Laura needs.
Yeah.
My wife.
I need that.
I need 8 to 9.
I need a good 9. I can do 8, but I really like 9.
Yes. Yeah.
That's my soft spot. That's my sweet spot, I should say. The numbers have come down, and I don't understand why, and I don't actually think it's accurate. I hear from parents with toddlers all the time, and their toddlers are going to bed at like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. I can't get them to sleep is the answer. Well, when are they waking up? 6 or 7. That is not enough sleep. And granted, there are always, the one kid who's never been the good sleeper, the one kid who really doesn't need it. But that is not common.
So, I mean, let's talk about bedtime or bedtime.
What time?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there certain times by when certain kids should be asleep? Yes.
I think you start with when they wake up, quite frankly,
yes,
right?
That's where it starts.
Like my kids go to sleep, like bedtime is 7:30.
Okay.
7:30. Granted, I say 20 minutes. I'd like to also believe that. Sometimes we go into half an hour, but I would say 90% of the time I'm out of that room by 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Of course, there's illness and upset and this and this and this that sometimes gets in the way of that. That gives my kids, who then have to wake up at 6:30 in the morning, is typically when we wake up, enough sleep.
Okay. So start with the wake up time and then do the math backwards to determine what time gives them the adequate number of hours of sleep.
And naps also play into that. I don't know if your 3-year-old still naps. A lot of 3-year-olds don't nap.
He doesn't.
By this point. Mine does. Depends, like not necessarily on a weekend, but school every day at daycare, because she's still in daycare, naps. So
yeah, we actually told the daycare to stop allowing our son to nap because he was not going to sleep at night, and it was detrimental to the whole process. Once we got him off nap, and we've been through it 3 times, so
yeah,
we knew exactly what it was.
100%.
Got to get him off naps because we can't get him to sleep at night. Yeah.
Right, which is not a problem for me. If it did, I'd do the exact same thing. I'm sorry, find something for them to do because, again, nighttime, precious, right? But you have to include that. If your child stops napping, that hour doesn't go away. You now have to figure out a way to give it to them in the evening because they do need that sleep. They say that children under, I'm going to, just put it out there, under, I would say like 8 or 9, going to bed later than 9 o'clock, there are significant differences in those children. Those children have a harder time falling asleep. They have a harder time staying asleep. And I think part of that is that the less sleep you have, and this is all of us, and this is where it's like an even playing field by bedtime at some level, is that if I have not had enough sleep, then my cortisol levels are higher. My stress levels are higher. That exists for infants, that exists for adults. Now, granted, what stress looks like for an infant is very different. I think often we look at those things as like attachment issues, like, oh, but this child is so stressed out when they leave. And the first thing I say is, how much sleep do they get?
Wow.
Because what may appear to be an attachment issue could be just a general level of stress. And people don't want to think about that for a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old.
Okay. So how much sleep should, so you said you have a 3,
6, 13.
13. So how do their number of hours differ?
I mean, obviously, the younger they are, the more sleep you need, right? Like it used to be, and now I have to look at the numbers again because they seem to be changing. But an infant required like 15 to 16 hours of sleep. When people think that, they think crazy, but those infants are also napping twice a day. I would say by like the 3, 6 range, like you still want them to have ideally 9 or 10 hours of sleep.
Okay.
Teenagers, about the same, actually.
Okay.
Like, I think that 9 to like 11 hour mark, if you can somehow land there, like under the age of 18, you're doing well. You're creating the best sleep time environment for your children.
Okay. So that's a good goal to have, 9 to 11 hours for your kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, developmentally, I know they're going through something different, but it's equally as stressful on the body, on the mind, on the emotions, on the psychology. Like, development doesn't stop, what do we say now, till the age of 27, brain development. There's a lot of years of change, of growth, of maturation in those 27 years. Sleep is important.
Hey, I mean, if I don't get enough sleep, my whole week potentially is affected. Remember
mine too, but for other reasons.
we had gone to a concert
Laura needs her
in the fall,
Mhm.
and my bedtime was set back, and then it affected me for the rest of the week.
Well, Stacey, and I think I've said this on a previous podcast. Don't you think it'd be a great business idea for like Ticketmaster, Live Nation, start doing matinee concerts? Yes. So again, Ticketmaster, Live Nation, do matinee. You can double the performances. Do the nighttime show and the
Then
1
let me
1
go
p.m.
to
show.
bed.
Yes,
Let me have a nice dinner and go to bed.
Yeah. We don't want to go to concerts late. We need to go to bed. We need to be in bed by 9 p.m. Okay, just hey.
I don't like anything that keeps me up or makes me have to stay up past a certain times. I don't even believe I can do it anymore.
My line, you know, back in the day, the classic line was nothing good happens after 2 a.m. Then my line changed to nothing good happens after 11 p.m. My new line is nothing good happens after 9 p.m.
There's nowhere I need to be past 9 p.m.
No, there isn't. And I have a list on my phone of the things or the people that matter most to me. And it's kind of my list that I refer back to so I can be mindful of my time. And my bedtime and getting enough sleep is on that list. So if something affects that, then I may choose to not do it because it will affect my bedtime. And then that'll just affect so many other things. So it is important.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about how we can structure the kids' bedtime and what we can do with them. But what can we as parents do for ourselves when we are short and when we're stressed and just struggling with their resistance and the delaying? And there are times when I'll yell at them. And like, what can we do?
I've yet to meet a parent that at some point doesn't admit, okay, I also may yell it from time to time. Oh, you think?
It's funny. I've again, number 2, I've yelled at on the rare occasion because they get riled up sometimes, and then they will actually inflict pain, and then I'll. Well, you're looking at me like if you do like a head bonk with them, because they're bouncing and they
like,
whack.
Why are you making our children sound like animals?
And it hurts. And then, but you're in that like you're like 8:30 and you're like, and you give like a sharp little bark back.
Of course.
And then they start crying.
Oh yeah.
But I smile at that point. 'Cause I'm like, he's gonna be asleep in 5 minutes now.
They're overtired.
They are overtired. Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing. They don't know.
No, they don't. And I think we're overtired then.
Mhm.
And we just want to get through it. And so, how can we manage our emotions or our stress in those moments?
It's not ever going to be perfect, right?
No.
Like that's the answer. I think, part of what we talked about was communication. The other piece is empathy.
Okay.
We make the rules. We are the deciders. They aren't. They know that. It's very hard to be told what to do all the time and to be directed all the time. And I think if you approach bedtime as, I recognize that I'm about to ask this children to do my plan, to see it through my way, and to have empathy for that. What I do sometimes, when we talk about like people change things, it's because your kids, we know kids, but I need this, but I need that, but I want this. Oh, where did I put that? Where is that one piece of Lego that I have not spoken about in 6 months? And right now, right at bedtime, I need to know where that particular piece of Lego is. It's like searching. And, like your younger ones, especially, they're not very good at like trying to be the master manipulator. So it's very obvious. Like my 3-year-old sometimes will sit there and be like, yep, there was something I had to ask. And she comes up with something and I'm like, oh, fascinating. I've never even heard of that before, but they just want to stall. That's that stalling piece. I write it down or I'll put it somewhere. I'll say, oh, you know what? That is so important. Instead of, we don't care. I don't care right now. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Go to bed. I'm turning off the lights. It's such a shutdown for children who already have such little autonomy in that situation. I'll say, even if it's silly, that piece of Lego, oh, that is extremely important. Mommy's going to take out her phone. I'm going to write it down in my notes so that we remember that tomorrow, as soon as you're up or as soon as you're home from school, we're going to find that piece of Lego.
Oh, I love that.
And they'll go, sometimes I don't think they believe me. They're, oh, really? Yeah. Okay, great. And then they feel better. They've been heard. They've been, they've had this space to talk about something that for whatever reason in that moment sounded important. And I've taken it seriously.
Okay. Not shutting them down, because your initial response, as an example, that is how I would have responded. I would have just shut them down.
No, I got to be proud of myself. I do that.
Good.
I don't physically write it down, but I say to them, hey, you know what? Tomorrow we'll go find it. Now sometimes I do forget. And but if it's important, they'll remind me.
Of course.
And then I do go.
Then you make sure you do it because you need them to believe you, right? Like you have to follow through.
Yeah,
you have to follow through.
Yeah.
We talked about the 5 Bs. Now I want to know where to place one particular item.
Sure.
Because when we go upstairs to start bedtime, our kids, they always want to release their energy and play monster and run around and get riled up.
Now that is before bath. Is
that the appropriate place?
Before bath.
Before
okay,
bath.
great.
Yeah, it's before bath.
Like I said, sometimes bath has to, we're not going to get them to do everything. Sometimes I do think as they get older, taking the time to have bath, then kind of moving back downstairs, doing something, calming, whatever. But if any of that riled up stuff is going to happen, it should be happening before the routine is in place.
Okay.
If anything needs to change, because of course things change. I mean, there's sometimes my kids go, I don't want to read a book tonight. Can we sing songs? Fine, but let me be clear. We're going to sing songs in the space that we would be reading books, and we will not be reading books.
Okay.
Right? So I think what parents often do is they end up, where's the hour? I spoke to a couple the other day who told me it literally takes them an hour and a half to put one child to bed and requires both of them.
I believe that.
And I said, the first thing I said was, what is not needed in that process? Well, there's a million things. I said, well, stop doing all of those things. Now, granted, it may now require a conversation with your child to explain, like, this is just too much. What are the most important things to you? And often kids will actually say, I want to, read my book and I want to sing a song. How do we make that work? You want to sing a song and read books? Great. That's 1 book and 1 song, or 2 songs and 1 book. Okay. Let's decide. And then if an incentive chart, for example, is an important thing, I think one of the questions that you had me think about was like children who are neurodivergent. And I would say things like charts are incredibly important because although The 5Bs, there's only 5 of them. A child with ADHD is going to get lost in between each of those 5. And we should anticipate that. Right? So incentives can be really helpful there, especially when your child has helped you to create the bedtime plan.
Okay.
I'll add one thing we haven't discussed it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that's creeping into our household, and imagine just with your household, Stacey,
Mm-hmm.
the nature of the kids' ages, you've already dealt with it. Is that when the evening activities, and when I mean
Yeah.
activities, like a kid's going to dance, and they naturally going to come home later than the other, let's say for us, 2, and that's going to impact the routine of the grouping. I would say it's communication with the partner and figuring out how the best way to deal with that. But any thoughts or comments on that?
I think we go back to this idea of like replication number 1,
Mhm.
which is whatever your plan is as a couple and how you're going to put your kids to bed, it should be everybody's plan.
Yep.
Only to say that if mom has to do it by herself or dad has to do it by himself, that's possible. They know what the plan is. We're not going to reinvent the wheel tonight because daddy's home or because mommy's home. Super important. For me, bedtime's like a vibe.
Okay.
So my 13-year-old clearly does not go to bed at 7:30. To your point, sometimes she's dancing until 9 o'clock at night. But regardless, when she comes home at 9 o'clock at night, the lights are dim.
Okay.
Everybody's in bed. The vibe in the house is bed, right? Like it is sleepy time for everybody, even when she's home. If we're sitting down watching TV as a family, that TV goes off at 7:30 for the little kid's bedtime. She's welcome to go up into her room and to watch something maybe on her iPad by herself. But this idea of like now the little kids have FOMO, right? Which is the big
Yep.
thing.
Oh, we've had it.
FOMO's all over the place.
Mhm.
I don't want them to feel like the party's continued while you had to go to bed.
Okay.
So the party stops.
Okay.
The lights go down. The lights upstairs are down. My eldest is in her room quietly.
Okay.
Sometimes she participates in the bedtime routine. She also knows what it is. And if she's not too busy, chatting with somebody, she will come in and engage in that bedtime routine too. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody participates in their own way. So I think that also helps kind of
Okay. Thanks.
children of different ages. How do you manage that?
It does.
Bedtime in my house is bedtime,
Okay.
whether you're actually physically sleeping right now, or sometimes that's when she goes up and has her shower and starts engaging in her bedtime routine. But my other kids know it's quiet in the house. I'm not missing out on anything.
I like
a
how
great
you
point.
said it's a vibe.
We need it too. And to your point, you asked, how do parents like regulate their own emotions in these situations? I think that helps too. I mean, I don't know how you guys are, but if I had to relax, say, in this room with camera lights and things like that, I can't do that. I think it creates a calm for everybody in your home when the lights are down and you're laughing at me.
No, I'm laughing because I love a good dimmer. I
Yes.
dim all the lights. And that's an issue with Alex because
He's thinking,
all of the lights are
It's either on
the
or off. I'm
second
not a dim.
floor. And so
not a
I
dimmer.
just love how you're saying that because I really do feel that it sets the mood
Yeah.
and the tone.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to go to sleep or put some kids to sleep, and then you're struck with all of these lights, it almost it changes the
It's
tone.
alarming.
It's alarming and can really wake you up. And so I feel that vibe, and I love that Alex heard that. And then I mean you could even like turn on the lights after if you need.
Sure. Once you're out of their space and they're, you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
But it might actually, I think it's good for all of us, emotional regulation is to be in a calmer space. If I'm feeling riled up by lights, by sounds, my patience with my children looks very different.
And I'll add, I love that you bring that up because I'll bring up something and I would advise parents not to do that. And we're being good. We've removed this from our coping mechanism. We don't have our phones with us during bedtime because that there is actually going to add stress. So you may think that you're getting a dopamine hit by looking at the phone and trying to get through bedtime. You're actually just adding stress. And let's say something like a text message or an email work comes up, that kind of thing on your phone. That's just going to set you off because you're already drained and now you're not being present with the child to try to get them to sleep. So I add, I love that you brought that up, like talking about that, putting yourself in the best situation to succeed. Don't have your phone with you at bedtime. Put that away. You can look at your phone once the kids go to bed.
100%. And actually, as a funny thing, that's where I have, certainly made my own mistakes with bedtime, is I used to wear an Apple Watch. And I don't know if your kids pay attention to your Apple Watch, but my middle realized I had an Apple Watch on. What does that do, Mama? So of course, starts flipping through and realizes, oh, there are little characters, pictures that you can access on the phone. That started to become part of our bedtime routine. So then she started going, wait, I haven't looked at the watch. Oh my gosh, I'm not even wearing the watch.
Yeah,
Then she wanted to change and I finally said, enough is enough. Mommy shouldn't have worn this. This now, again, lights and, becoming, engaged in this silly Apple Watch became a thing.
And I saw that as well because I used to have the notification set up on here.
Right.
And they saw me looking at it. So I actually, and just for my own mental health, I removed all the notifications. So now it's actually just a watch.
That's also
and a
helpful.
Timer.
Yes.
And that was actually life-changing for me. And now they aren't seeing me preoccupied by my watch. And that's not disrupting the whole process.
And I think to that point, I think if you can just take the 20 minutes, half an hour that you're going to need to put your kids to bed and actually engage and recognize that this is it and this is what we're going to do and be calm, they feed off of that.
Yeah.
How many times the yelling piece? I'm glad it works when the kids are so tired, they cry and they go to sleep. But for some kids, you're looking for safety. You're looking to self-soothe. And here's mommy or daddy, your primary attachment's yelling at you. That's not calming.
No.
That's not safe. Now, a child who's sensitive to that is all of a sudden going, oh my goodness, are they mad at me? Am I in trouble? And then you go, now go to bed, and dramatically shut the door and turn off all the lights. Well, that child at some level is left so unsafe because now they're concerned that you're mad at them.
Stacey, you have me reflecting on so much here. We've learned so much from you, and I'm really excited to implement these things tonight.
Yes.
We will have to have a conversation and we can implement this and hopefully start down a new path to a smoother bedtime. So thank you so much for being here, sharing your insights and strategies. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap on today's episode. A huge thank you to Stacey Brion for sharing her expertise and practical strategies to reduce the stress of bedtime with kids. I'm looking forward to attempting these strategies tonight with our kids. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts and any bedtime wins you've had after trying these strategies. You can also connect with us on Instagram @intentionalhousehold to keep the conversation going. And if you're looking for more personalized support, be sure to reach out to Stacey at familytherapyto.com for her expert guidance tailored to your family's needs.